Trump is now crashing out and viciously attacking his own supporters over the Epstein files, saying they're stupid and weaklings. Joe Rogan and others are openly mocking and turning on the president. Also, why this new bombshell vaccine study is bad news for measles fans and RFK Jr., and what's really going on with this Trump voter data scandal in 9 states. We're talking about all of that and even more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, starting with this. Donald Trump is now crashing out against his own MAGA supporters over Epstein right now, with Trump calling them stupid people, foolish people, and weaklings, all because they care about the thing that he and his people have been pushing for years. And while Trump has been flailing all over the place, where I'll start is with this morning, where he logged onto Truth Social and went on to say, the radical left Democrats have hit pay dirt again, saying their new scam is what we will forever call the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, and my past supporters have bought into this bullshit hook, line, and sinker. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years. He then goes on to say he's had more success in 6 months than perhaps any president in our country's history. And as far as his supporters, who understand, are people that just want transparency on the thing that he promised them, said, let these weaklings continue forward and do the Democrats' work. Don't even think about talking of our incredible and unprecedented success, because I don't want their support anymore. You know, when I read that this morning, I was like, this is like a spiteful, gaslighting boyfriend or girlfriend message, which is also why it wasn't surprising that in his Truth Social replies, like his own social media platform replies, which is usually filled with people that glaze him like he's a Krispy Kreme donut. You saw tons of people fed up with Trump constantly trying to undermine this case, even though his administration was the one promising to expose it. And while you had, in his words, his past supporters calling him out, you had also the other side of the aisle grabbing some popcorn and mocking Trump for thinking that a statement attacking his own base was going to get them to shut up. Many specifically appalled that he's calling Epstein a hoax when he was a fully convicted sex offender. Remember, there are very real victims in this situation. Well, there are a wide variety of conspiracies and speculation and unanswered questions with the case. This is a fact. There are victims, and with that you had some arguing that Trump calling it a hoax, it's just a slap in the face of the victims. So as all of that's been playing out, we've also seen Democratic politicians getting involved. With, for example, Representative Nydia Velasquez of New York writing, he desperately wants us to look away. So do House Republicans. We're not letting this go. Release the files. And that is reportedly Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego is introducing legislation that would ask the DOJ to release files related to Epstein. And Gallego writing on Twitter, no more secrecy, no more protecting the elite. I'm leading the charge to make the Epstein files public and putting Republicans on the record. Whose side are they on? Right, and that is, yesterday you had Republican Representative Thomas Massie separately introducing a discharge petition to force a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives on releasing the complete files. With us today learning that other representatives like Lauren Boebert co-sponsored the legislation. Right, and that is, yes, if you watched yesterday's show, you know that House Republicans just yesterday blocked an effort to force a debate on the files being released. But as you had places like the New York Times explaining, as more of their constituents demand the release of the files, they are looking for ways to respond. And noting discharge petitions are always an uphill battle and rarely succeed, but Democrats and Republicans alike said this particular issue, one that is definitional to Mr. Trump's political base and is now being seized on by Democrats, could be an exception. So all this buildup, it's likely at least part of what contributed to Trump waking up and just setting his keyboard on fire. Right? That and, well, I guess people on the right just increasingly demanding that the Epstein files be released and slamming his administration for the way they've let this case unravel. I mean, even had Speaker of the House Mike Johnson appearing on Benny Johnson's podcast yesterday to say,
Reagan used to tell us we should trust the American people. I believe in that principle. I know President Trump does as well. We should put everything out there and let the people decide it. I mean, the White House and the White House team are privy to facts that I don't know. I mean, this isn't my lane. I haven't been involved in that. But I agree with the sentiment that we need to put it out there.
Right, and that is in another section of the podcast world. You had Joe Rogan talking about on his podcast, mocking the Trump administration.
They've got videotape, and all of a sudden they don't. You know, you have the director of the FBI on this show saying there's no tape. If there was, nothing you're looking for is on those tapes. Like, what? Why did they say there was thousands of hours of tapes of people doing horrible shit? Why did they say that?
Right.
Didn't Pam Bondi say that? She said something about that there was like thousands of hours of tapes of people doing horrible crimes.
There is. And didn't the FBI dude say that there was nothing?
Kash Patel said there's nothing you're looking for. Oh, okay.
And also, regarding the president's own words, he was asked about them this morning. Right, and there it appeared he might have realized he's not completely infallible with his base, with him kind of walking back his comments when he was asked to clarify his Truth Social post, including if he was disowning his followers, to which he said,
no, but I lost a lot of faith in certain people. Yeah, I lost because they got duped by the Democrats.
So Trump then at other points during the press conference continuing to undermine the case while defending Pam Bondi's response to it.
They're wasting their time with a guy who obviously had some very serious problems, who died 3-4 years ago. Instead, they want to talk about the Epstein hoax. And the sad part is it's people that are really doing the Democrats' work. They're stupid people. Pam Bondi, I really think that she's done very good. She says, I gave you all the credible information. And if she finds any more credible information, she'll give that too. What more can she do than that?
Still, you have many, including Donald Trump's biggest supporters, saying that his attitude on this, it's just going to hurt him in the long run. For example, Laura Loomer doing an interview with Politico today where she said that this controversy, it threatens to consume his whole presidency, and adding, obviously, this is not a complete hoax given the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell is currently serving 20 years in prison in Florida for her crimes and activities with Jeffrey Epstein, who we know is a convicted sexual predator. This is why I said, and I'll reiterate it again, the best thing that the president can do is appoint a special counsel to handle the Epstein files investigation. And apparently, her suggestion is in the cards, with two White House sources telling Reuters this morning that officials are weighing a few different options. Things like unsealing new documents, appointing a special prosecutor, and drafting executive actions on pedophilia. In that report, even saying that senior aides have reached out to MAGA influencers to ask them to dial down their criticisms of how the Epstein case has been handled, which may also explain why certain influencers have seemingly gotten in line with the president and others haven't. But, for now, we're gonna have to wait to see how this plays out. But the last thing that I'll say with this, for someone like Donald Trump, who has masterfully navigated his ecosystem in the political world, something feels like it has to be up with him either mentally or health-wise, or with the Epstein case specifically. This is a bombshell situation of their own creation. Donald Trump and many of the people around him, they ran on, we are going to release the Epstein files. The elites, maybe they're being protected by the government. We have to figure out the truth and get it out there. That's why you have to vote, make us the government. But then when they got voted in and they became that government, all of a sudden it became, oh, it's the Epstein hoax. Actually, Biden, Obama, Comey, and Hillary Clinton, they made the Epstein files. And even though they made them, they also didn't use them in the election where I was just crushing them. And then, even though they made everything up, they left them there for me to be able to do whatever I want to once I got into power. Because all of that makes sense. And actually, if you don't believe me, I don't care how much of a fan you were, fuck you, you're stupid. You're unloyal, bad people. It's like at the very least watching an emotionally abusive relationship play out. Like at this point, some of his supporters I think are just hoping that he's sundowning. But hey, for now, that's where we are. We're gonna have to wait to see where things go from here. And I gotta pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts and reactions to everything we're seeing play out? And then, I've got more news for you in just a minute, but first, honest question. How many brilliant ideas are just rotting in your notes app right now? Right, somewhere in that dusty graveyard of someday ideas lies your new side hustle. And I want you to make today the day that you commit to taking that opportunity or passion project to the next level. Or for me, it was my on-again, off-again book club. I'd put it off forever. And I kid you not, the DeFranco Book Club, it went from someday to launched in under an hour with today's sponsor, Squarespace. Because they make it crazy easy to build a site and you can start selling content, courses, physical or digital products. Whatever you've got in mind. So whether you're just showcasing something or you want to charge a one-time fee, offer a subscription, both done and done. And they've got stunning templates that look like you hired a designer, and their Fluid Engine editor, it lets you drag, drop, customize, no coding, no stress, no excuses. My team even uses Squarespace for our Daily Dip newsletter, where tens of thousands of you guys just get your PDS fix in your inbox every weekday. New polls, giveaways, PDS show notes, all run through Squarespace. And like clockwork, a Daily Dip issue went out today, and your project vision could be next. So hey, take that first step today with a free trial at squarespace.com/Phil, or scan that QR code and make today launch day. Just remember that when it's ready to go, use code Phil to get 10% off and let them know we sent you. But then next up in the news, we have to talk about Donald Trump making a power grab for the 2026 midterm elections. With reports now coming in that his minions are calling around state governments and they're trying to get into their voter rolls and equipment. And for some very important context here, that the federal government is supposed to have a very limited role in dictating how elections are run, thanks to a little sexy thing known as the Constitution. Right, Article 1, Section 4 states, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. And so that is why whenever the federal government tries to stick its fingers into the election process, state and local officials get really pissed off. But that appears to be exactly what the Trump administration is now doing, with the Washington Post reporting that the Justice Department has recently asked at least 9 states for copies of their voter rolls. We're talking Alaska, Colorado, Florida, Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire, New York, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin. With so far, Colorado and Florida reportedly handing over the information, though only which is generally available to the public, and the other states still reviewing the requests. Right, as far as what exactly the DOJ is planning to do with those rolls, we can kind of only speculate, with the president's supporters claiming that they're just trying to make sure that elections are secure and prevent voter fraud, though critics accusing them of trying to manipulate or even rig the 2026 midterms. Though all of that is according to the Post. Two DOJ lawyers explained their request by saying they meant to enforce Trump's executive order mandating certain rules around election procedures. And this, even though federal courts have so far blocked the most controversial parts of the order, like requiring proof of citizenship on voter registration forms and banning mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day. But reportedly, the DOJ is focused on another provision about sharing sharing information. And they, one, seem to be reaching out to both Republican and Democratic states, and two, taking different approaches with each one. So reportedly, for example, in Alaska, they question why no voters have been removed from the rolls for mental incompetence, whereas in other states, they asked detailed questions about the process to remove non-citizens and other ineligible voters from the rolls. But according to reports, the most unusual state by far was Colorado. Right in there, they reportedly asked its Secretary of State to turn over all records relating to 2024 federal elections, as well as preserve any records that remain from the 2020 election. A request that many experts and local officials found extremely troubling, with, for example, David Becker, who runs the nonpartisan Center for Election Innovation and Research, telling NPR, it would be an enormous amount of information, and it's very unlikely the DOJ would even know what to do with all of that. This appears more like a fishing expedition than it does some kind of targeted investigation. Right? And for some very important context here, Colorado has been a unique target for conspiracy theorists since 2020 because of this woman right here, Tina Peters. Because you see, she is the former Mesa County clerk who was sentenced to 9 years in prison last year for letting an outsider into secure areas of her office to copy election data in 2020. A crime which, mind you, she was convicted and sentenced to 9 years in prison for, though she never stopped being defiant, with her even arguing with the judge during her sentencing.
Did they not?
I understand what you're saying, Your Honor.
Did they count the ballots?
No, the ballot images were changed, and that's what the total shows. Okay, I'll move off of this because I can see that I would encourage to read the report number 3.
I've read them, ma'am.
You've read all of them?
I've read those reports. They were given to me at some point, I believe.
Good. Well, so you know what I'm saying is true.
But then in March, you had Trump's DOJ throwing its weight behind Peters and sending the court a filing in support of her release on bond while she awaits an appeal ruling. Right? You had an agency lawyer saying it intended to evaluate whether the state prosecution was, quote, oriented more toward inflicting political pain than toward pursuing actual justice or legitimate governmental objectives, which is unsurprisingly something that was echoed by Trump himself, who wrote on Truth Social that Peters was an innocent political prisoner being horribly and unjustly punished, with him then adding, this is a communist persecution by the radical left Democrats to cover up their election crimes and misdeeds in 2020. With Trump finishing, I am hereby directing the Department of Justice to take all necessary action to help secure the release of this hostage being held in a Colorado prison by the Democrats for political reasons. Free Tina Peters now. And so understandably, you have many worrying that the administration's request for information, it has something to do with her case. But also, according to the Washington Post, last week, the request went even further, with Jeff Small, a consultant who's worked for members of Congress, most recently serving as chief of staff to Lauren Boebert, reportedly calling and messaging numerous Colorado officials, with reports saying he specifically asked them permission to physically inspect their election equipment, something that is extremely tightly guarded by state law. Now, reportedly, the White House wouldn't say whether it was working with Small, but Small himself said it was, according to multiple sources. With a message to one clerk reportedly reading, I am reaching out on a timely election integrity project I'm working with the White House on and was hoping to chat. And another message saying the request is from Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff. And finally, you had one Republican clerk saying that Small told him that he was working with the Justice and Homeland Security departments on election security. And that clerk adding that he had gotten a call from a Homeland Security official who wanted to review his election equipment. Right? And so in total, you had 6 Republican clerks raising concerns about the White House's intentions, and one saying, to me, it felt like they were wanting to intervene before 2026. Now, as far as what they could actually do, some fear that they're going to try to create a national database with sensitive personal information for millions of voters. Others think they might try to impose rules that kick eligible voters off the rolls and make it generally harder to cast ballots. And yet more suspect that they'll twist the data to try to make it look like there was widespread fraud and cast doubt on the integrity of elections. But whatever the case may be, you have people scared, and apparently enough so that more than 350 election officials from at least 33 states joined a conference call on Monday to discuss the White House's actions. And so in part, it feels like we're seeing soldiers lining up on either side of the battlefield and everyone just kind of holding their breath for what's going to happen with this next election cycle. But then next up in the news, and horrible news for RFK Jr. and measles, Denmark just looked at the records of 1.2 million kids over the past 24 years. And in particular, they looked at whether aluminum, which is common in many vaccines, actually increases the risk of 50 diseases and disorders, including autism, asthma, and autoimmune issues. Right? And they were actually inspired to do this because of a CDC-funded study from 2022 that suggested that aluminum in childhood vaccines might be linked to asthma, which is something that concerned and was touted by anti-vax or vaccine-hesitant people as proof that they were dangerous. With then HHS Secretary RFK Jr. saying in 2024 that aluminum in vaccines was extremely neurotoxic. However, a big thing is that CDC-funded study was criticized because of a huge flaw. It did not differentiate how kids were exposed to aluminum. And so really, it just said that aluminum exposure in general might be linked to stuff like asthma. And so the Danish researchers, they were like, okay, let's remove that variable. And to do that, they looked at the medical records of every vaccinated Danish kid over the past 24 years, and they found very different results. Right? In the short version, Vaccines containing aluminum are not linked in any significant way, or at all in the vast majority of cases, to autism, asthma, autoimmune disorders, and a wide range of other ailments. And that notably as they do not deny that aluminum can be dangerous. Neurotoxic effects of aluminum have been observed in animal models, rats subjected to long-term high-dose administration, and in humans receiving high-level exposure through dialysis, occupational inhalation, or intravenous nutrition. However, and this is the huge key thing, those exposure levels are far higher than what a vaccine offers. It is why there is an understanding in the medical world that the dose is the poison. Enough water will have detrimental effects and or kill you. And with that, you have the writers pointing to well-attested papers which prove that the amount of aluminum a baby is exposed to when getting a vaccine is extremely low, and in many cases, not even detectable. It's claiming that vaccines are dangerous because of the trace amounts of aluminum. That's like saying you shouldn't eat almonds because it has cyanide. So like, yeah, if you were getting shots every single day, all day, you might get a dangerous exposure level. But the handful of shots that we get growing up, they're safe. Not to mention that they're a critical component of making these vaccines work by pushing the body to have a more forceful autoimmune response. Also, on top of everything, I just gotta say, it's not literal aluminum metal that is being injected to kids. These are aluminum salt compounds. I see a lot of people getting things confused. And there, in fact, you had a writer on this paper saying the aluminum that is in vaccines is in the form of extremely small amounts of aluminum salts, which is not the same as elemental aluminum, which is a metal. It's really important for parents to understand that we are not injecting metal into children. Also, an interesting aspect of this whole study is, while it looked at vaccinated children, an important thing to keep in mind is that the amount of aluminum within vaccines has shifted dramatically over the past 24 years. And so because of that, they had huge groups of children with varying dosages to compare to. And despite the varying dosages, there was no difference. And that's also without mentioning that if aluminum compounds at low doses was a problem, we would have been fucked a long time ago, since it's in a lot of foods that we've eaten since the dawn of time. And so taking all of that together, it's why you have experts praising this as the largest and most definitive observational study on the safety of vaccine-related aluminum exposure in children. I mean, even the people who wrote that criticized paper from 2022, they were stoked on this study and they praised it. But the reality is that despite that, and 70 years of proof that these vaccines are effective and safe, it is a real possibility that at home, we're still gonna see a wave of anti-vax policies under RFK Jr. And at least, as of recording, his department hasn't made any comment about this study. But then, finally today, I wanna end with a congratulations and talk about y'all's comments. Starting with congratulations to Eddie H., SeatGeek's latest weekly winner, and he's using his $500 to catch a White Sox game, which I haven't been keeping track of baseball. Is that as painful of a watch as it has been for a while? They're 32-65. Okay, so things are going great for you guys. You know what? Respect. It would be so much easier for you guys to become Cubs fans, but you're sticking with it. Personally, me, different sport. I got tired of the Jets just punching me in the back of the head every single year since I was a child, and I fully embraced the Chargers before they started winning, notably. I was going to every home game watching Staley pick the dumbest fucking plays in the world. But anyway, for everyone else, that's right, SeatGeek is still giving away $500 in tickets, and you should definitely enter today if you haven't already. I mean, just imagine being the next winner and snagging $500 towards seeing your favorite artist, sporting event, or play. I mean, there's over 70,000 events to choose from. So whether you want to go watch the White Sox get destroyed with Eddie, or you want to go see Beyonce, like I did with my wife the other day, there is something to choose from. And all you got to do is add code PDS to your SeatGeek app profile for a chance of the weekly $500 prize. No purchase necessary. Wow, I think I need to pull back the amount of personality I put into that ad read. Everyone's going to expect it. But with that said, let's talk about y'all's comments and some commentary. And actually, I'll be pulling comments from 2 videos yesterday because I gave you a double dose of filth. Something that a number of people who watch the show, because they're sickos in the head, have referred to as being getting DP. Prude. Rude. And I really wouldn't rather have you any other way. But starting with Trump and Epstein versus MAGA is Crazier Than You Think, featuring Tim Miller, right? We had Tim Miller from The Bulwark coming on. Why are you texting me, people? It's great having him on. It was actually our first time ever meeting and talking. And it was really cool to see so many of y'all in the comments welcoming both of him and Pete, especially because in the past, like people that watched the show at the time would hate when people came on the show. And secondly, it was awesome to see that people really like those bonus videos, which, by the way, those interviews are going to be something I do far more regularly. And if you want to get them early, like right after I film them, links in the description, go follow it. Right now we're calling it In Good Faith with Philip DeFranco. You can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you follow us there, which please do, give us 5 stars and leave a comment about how you like the podcast and stuff. Right, and then as far as the full main show, we had comments like $200 million for a faulty AI, but we can't help those affected by natural disasters. Our government spending priorities are horrendous. But to that, I would say, if you, your mom, your dad, someone you care about, you lose your health coverage over the next 2 years when the Republican Trump changes go through know that at least you or they are suffering so we could give ICE more money than most militaries in the world. Slamming random nannies' faces into the ground and clearing out, I guess, Home Depot parking lots. You know, the most dangerous of dangerous criminals. You also had I saying, the GOP last week, release the files. And the GOP this week, protect the files. To which there, I would say, to be fair, GOP politicians. I mean, we'll have to see what the end game is and where all roads lead, but I have seen a decent sizable chunk of Republicans speaking out against Trump here. I mean, it's part of the reason today he was lashing out at them, calling them weaklings, calling them past supporters. He called them stupid. You know, I understand why people out there are like spamming, oh, you fell for it again award memes, but I also think Democrats and the left need to leave enough room open to allow people to at least migrate towards the middle, if not onto their side. And again, you know, if you've been reveling in this, I'm not gonna villainize you or be like talk down to you. Because I mean, what a thing it is to feel like the thing that you've been warning other people about for the past fucking 4 years play out. And during that time, a lot of these folks would treat you like you're crazy, go, oh, you're suffering from TDS. But I mean, looking at the relationship with Trump and them, it's like watching an emotionally abusive person gaslighting someone. And actually, unfortunately, like if you've ever had a person like that you've tried to warn, like with their relationship with that boyfriend or girlfriend, and you see that playing out, they usually do kill the messenger. But also sometimes several years later, after they realize, oh shit, you were right, there's the ability for them to move on or back away or change. It's not guaranteed, and especially I think in a world where, you know, I feel like we've been trained over the past decade to think that nothing fucking matters. But they don't call him Teflon Don just cause of the alliteration. Nothing's really stuck till now, so seeing it kind of stick here, it's like it's a weird thing to watch. And with all this, harking back to the conversation I had with Tim Miller yesterday, I very much believe this idea of I think Democrats really need to take the opportunity to, go, hey, look, two-faced, hypocrites, lying, but also find ways to connect that and other failings to what they can actually do for the people. Because as shitty as Trump's polling is right now, especially with him turning on a huge chunk of his base, Democrats, it's not looking great. Other guy bad, even historically bad, cannot be the whole push. And I know we all don't have attention spans anymore, but I very much agree with the comment here. It's going to take decades, if not a century, to undo all the harm that's been done in the last 7 months alone. And I'm not saying that's the specific timeline. I'm saying that it is bigger than a 4-year election cycle. It is bigger than the 2-year election cycles. It is bigger than even just the next decade. Progress is not a straight line. Mistakes happen, but lessons have to be learned. I've been wrong, you've been wrong. I've been tricked before, you've been tricked before. And who we are as individuals and who we are as a fucking country, it comes down to, did we learn lessons and how do we proceed from there? But hey, that's just this one guy's thoughts, and whether you agree or you disagree or you have any thoughts about today's show, I'd love to hear from you in those comments down below. I think that was a sentence. But that, my friend, you beautiful bastard, is the end of today's show. If you happen to miss last night's episode and or bonus video, definitely check that out. I got a link down below as well as on screen. And of course, I'll see you right back here tomorrow because I got a brand new show for you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you then.